Before you listen, if you enjoy the stories and want to hear more, then please consider subscribing. Most of you listening aren't subscribed, so please take this time to subscribe. Turn on notifications so you'll never miss a story and be the first to hear. You'll also be supporting me. Thank you.
Max ran away from home when he was 14 years old. He was tired of the constant drunkenness of his parents, which often ended in assault on him. The guy was thin and couldn't hit back his father, and he would not dare raise a hand against him, because he understood that parents are sacred, even if they don't put you in anything. Max got a job as a loader and rented a dorm room, but in 2 years, he ruined his health so much that he was fired from his job. He had nothing to pay for housing, and Max ended up on the street. He considered returning to his parents, although he knew that they were not looking for him. One day, he came to where he used to live. The neighbor said that the apartment was taken away for debts, and his parents left for some village and didn't leave their contacts. Max didn't begin to explain that he had health problems, and that now he had nowhere to live. All the same, hardly anyone will believe him, let alone help him. The guy found himself a more or less cozy place in an abandoned house in the private sector and settled there. As before, he was engaged in unloading work, which worsened his health even more. But he only earned a little money for food. Sometimes, he sat in the passage and begged for alms. But passers-by refused to help a healthy guy as it seemed to them. He collected scrap metal, bottles, and everything that could be sold. The guy lived on the proceeds. He was 17 years old. He didn't see his future and hoped that his life would not be long. Once, Max woke up from the smell of burning. He didn't immediately understand what had happened, and when he heard the crackling of wood, he immediately jumped to his feet. The guy carefully approached the window, covered from the wind with polyethylene. When he looked closer, he saw a house on fire in the next street. Max quickly put on a windbreaker and ran to the flaming building. The house was on fire and people stood and watched. Some eyewitnesses filmed the bright flames on camera. The howl of fire sirens announced that the rescuers were close. Max realized that he had nothing to do here and decided to leave unnoticed. But suddenly, he saw a girl in a burning house who was banging her fist on the glass with tears. The crowd whispered, "Will the firemen have time?" Max didn't understand why people had such hard hearts. The child needed help, and seconds were counting. The guy didn't have basic knowledge of fire safety, but still he frantically rushed into the yard. His tenacious gaze fell on the stairs, which lay on the ground. Max picked her up and put her against the wall, climbed up and tried to assess the situation. There was thick smoke in the room and the girl was coughing. She was pale and could suffocate with carbon monoxide. The guy decided to break the window and pull her out before the flames burst into the room. Max began to shout, "Move to the right!" The girl obediently obeyed his order, and the guy immediately hit the glass with his elbow. A stabbing pain engulfed his arm. The guy began to hastily get rid of protruding pieces of cracked glass, and when he had freed enough space, he held out his arms to the girl. Max shouted, "Let's go faster!" Flames burst into the room and began to quickly approach them. The frightened girl looked around and ran to the broken window. Max took her armpits, carefully pulled her out of the window so as not to accidentally injure her, pressed her to him and began to carefully descend. She looked about 10 years old. The guy wondered how she was left at home alone. Firefighters arrived and started putting out the fire. Several rescuers rushed to the house to check if anyone was left there. Max tried to hand the terrified girl over to one of the rescuers, but she clung tightly to him with her little hands. He squatted down and whispered, "Cheer up. In life, more hard difficulties happen, but you got a second chance. Everything will be fine." The girl smiled. "Thank you," and her smile pierced the guy to the core. It was the most sincere and priceless word of gratitude that Max had ever heard in his life. He nodded and tears welled up in his eyes. The guy noticed blood on the girl's hands, decided that she was injured, and sent her to the doctors who came to the rescue. Max merged with the crowd and began to watch. For some reason, he was worried if the girl's parents were in a burning house, whether they were alive. The cry of the rescuer was heard. "We have two!" Doctors examined the man and woman. They said to calm the girl, "They are alive. Everything will be fine." Max calmed down and hurried back to his hideout without drawing too much attention. Life has taught him to become invisible. Until now, The crowd had paid no attention to him, and he slipped away unnoticed. Max got to his haven, sat down on a shabby mattress, and only now noticed that blood was dripping from his palms. He was so worried that he didn't even feel the pain that was now literally bursting his body. Wincing in pain, he took out a simple medical arsenal from an old backpack, bandages and peroxide. He began to fill his wounds with peroxide. Some of the cuts were deep. He had to use his fingers to feel the painful spots, clenching his teeth to make sure there was no glass in them. And again, fill them with peroxide. Max bandaged his palms. He could barely move his hand, which he used to break the glass. It's been 9 years. Each year was more painful than the last. Max hoped that this year would be his last. It was winter, and he lay on a bench in the park and froze. Suddenly, the guy felt an unprecedented bliss. It seemed to him for a moment that from now on he would live in another world where everything is fine, where there is no need, where everyone has a loving family. He woke up in a hospital bed. The doctors grumbled something like, "Why did this woman have to panic and call an ambulance? There would be one less homeless person, and the world would not suffer." Max himself thought the same way. The world would not get worse without him. He remembered the sincere smile of the girl he had saved. Her gratitude warmed his heart. This gratitude seemed to tell the guy that he didn't live in vain in this world. Max again tried to settle in life and find a job. He couldn't work as a loader, and they didn't take him into the guard. He had problems with documents. He lost them along with his backpack, and now he was a nobody. The guy was afraid to go to the police because he had heard enough from others that the homeless were not allowed on the threshold there. He hoped that this would all be over soon. Once, Max was sitting in the passage and looked at the crowd of passers-by. His gaze lingered on the girl who looked at him in a special way. She was pretty and smiled sincerely. Max thought, "That can't be," and he lowered his head, trying to hide his eyes. The girl didn't leave, but continued to stand and look at him. Soon, she dared to come closer. The girl cautiously asked him, "Please tell me, did you save the girl from the burning house 9 years ago?" Exactly, it was her. Max didn't believe his own eyes and ears, as if they were deceiving him. He answered dryly, without raising his head, "No, you have confused me with someone else." The girl continued to insist, "Your voice. Please try to remember. Burning house. Girl, you broke the glass." The guy replied again, "I didn't do anything like that. I'm not a hero. You're confusing me with someone else." The girl squatted down next to him, trying to look into his eyes. "Please show me your hands." Max didn't want to show his scarred palms, but the girl herself gently touched his hands and turned them palms up. She whispered with some elusive joy in her voice, "It's you. It was you." The guy said, "Just don't pay me money now and try to say that it was a heroic deed. Did you go somewhere? Move on, because I don't need pity." The girl sobbed, "You don't understand. All these 9 years I've been looking for you. I've watched videos and news bulletins where your face only flashed a couple of times. I expected to find you one day. I searched all social networks for the photo, but I didn't find a match. And now I understand why." The guy replied again, "Hero didn't live up to your expectations? You're right. And now that you have found me and satisfied your curiosity, go on to where you were going." The girl confidently said, "I leave here only with you." For a few more minutes, Stephanie, that was the name of the girl, tried to persuade Max to go with her, and then she grabbed his arm and began to pull him along. He surrendered to her pressure and decided that he still had nothing to do. If she so desires, he will answer all her questions and allow him to make a hero out of himself, and then he will disappear. The guy asked, interrupting Stephanie's admiring story, "Where are you taking me?" The girl talked about how she imagined her savior, how he came to her in a dream and told her that he needed help. Fate itself pushed us together, so that first you helped me, and then I helped you. We are going to my apartment. Don't worry, my parents live in a different area. I live alone. I rent an apartment, but I hope that one day I will earn money and buy my own apartment." You should be worried. Are you taking a homeless person to your apartment and not afraid? You don't know me. No, I know you. I saw your eyes, then I remembered. They were filled with kindness, which I saw only in the eyes of my parents. I want to feed you a delicious lunch and let you warm up. My father works for the police. He will help you get settled so that you no longer live on the street. You know how to convince. You had to start the conversation with this, because after you announce who your father is, every person with unkind thoughts will bypass you. Stephanie laughed out loud and her cheeks dimpled. Max immediately looked away. He had nothing behind him despite his 26 years, and therefore he didn't plan to look at women. When Max came to the girl's house, he put himself in order. He looked in the mirror and recoiled because he didn't recognize his own reflection. The guy looked good, and he could safely be called handsome. The guy thought that fairy tales don't last forever, and he will soon become who he was in the morning. But everything turned out differently. Stephanie's father turned out to be a strict but good man. He helped Max recover the documents and lightly scolded him for hiding right away then. He would help him right away. Stephanie uttered those words that Max once told her. "Fate gave you a second chance." And a smile appeared on his lips. Perhaps it really was. The girl's father arranged for Max to work as a security guard and sent him to study so that he would receive a professional security guard license. Max was glad that now he had a job and a small studio that he could rent. The guy decided that he would not miss this opportunity, but would use it wisely. He didn't want to go back to the streets. Stephanie tried her best to make sure that Max didn't miss the chance and didn't return to where he started. She gave him a phone and often called him and was interested in how he was doing at work and school. Sometimes, she came to his studio to watch films with him because Max missed so much. At work, Max passed a probationary period, received his first salary, and decided to call the girl. He asked in a worried voice, "Hi, are you calling yourself? This is something new. Did something happen to you?" "Hi, actually, something happened to me. All in all." Max paused because he didn't know how to communicate with girls. "Stephanie, what are you doing tonight?" "Nothing. I'm at home as usual. And what?" "I have 2 tickets to the concert of the band you told me so much about. And I thought that..." Stephanie interrupted him. "Date? Of course I'll go. And you won't be limited to just one date. After all, the concert will not be the only one." "Of course not." Max breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the sweat off his forehead.